Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another round of Basis Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, colleague, relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. Now, apologies, I was supposed to put this out yesterday, but I got a little bit caught up just enjoying a bit of time to myself, getting a few bits and pieces done for some other things that I'm doing at the moment. But look, we move. There's a lot of boxing on this weekend, like a lot from all different sides of the world. But I'm gonna keep this one relative to the main cards and realistically like the main bouts on those cards. So yeah, if your favorite fight isn't on here, I apologize, but yeah, there's too many to go through. With that being said, we'll start off with the Matchroom boxing card. There's only one fight to really talk about on there, and then sort of we'll see where we go from there. But without further ado, let's get into the picks. Alright, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. It's Cameron Vong versus Jordan Flynn. This is on the undercard to the Pat Brown debut fight. It's a 6-rounder in the cruiserweight division. There's no point me really giving a prediction on that fight. We all know what the play is supposed to be. If there's anything about Pat Brown, it's always supposed to get that knockout victory. But Cameron Vong versus Jordan Flynn. So this is a super lightweight / light welterweight bout. Interestingly, it's obviously at the third time of asking. I think the very first time was actually no. I think both times this fight got rescheduled, it was injury to Cameron Vong. Definitely the second time. The first time might have been a Jordan Flynn. Actually, no. I think the first time was Jordan Flynn injury. And then yeah, Cameron Vong was the second time. I think that's how it went anyway. Ultimately, you look at it, Jordan Flynn is had a pretty good amateur record, was sort of decent fundamentals, but he's primarily a guy that's campaigned at lower weights. 130 and 135 were his natural divisions. I think he has now moved up officially to sort of that 140 area. I don't know if it was getting a bit tight to sort of make the lower weights, but yeah, him and Cameron are both undefeated. Jordan has one draw on his record. Cameron obviously is a clean bill of health at the moment, although most people do think that he should have lost his last fight. I mean, look, if we're just going by, I guess, who got the more seasoning as a pro, it's definitely Jordan Flynn. But I think that Cameron Vong, because he can fight in more than one way, he's got that, he can fight a bit on the outside if he needs to, he can move around, but he can, not so much sit in the pocket, but he can stay mid-range as well, stay a bit closer, try to let his hands go. Isn't blessed with much power, like with a copious amounts of power, I should say, but neither is Jordan Flynn. I think Cameron Vong's got the speed. I think he's got the speed advantage. He's the slightly bigger of the two. He's definitely the taller of the two guys. I think he's also got slightly longer reach, not by a huge amount, but a little bit. Even though I feel like Jordan Flynn is definitely gonna have his successes in this match, I can't see him ultimately, I guess, getting a decision at the end of it. I do think it goes a distance. I think no matter what happens with either guy, they're both gonna be defensively responsible enough to not get themselves stopped, especially after such a quote-unquote grudge match between the two. But I do think that Cameron Vong is going to win the fight. I'm not sure if it's going to be a unanimous or split decision, but he's definitely going to win on points as far as I'm concerned. Now, let's move over to the main stuff for the weekend. Alright, so next up, we're going to go over to the DAZN card that's taking place on, I think it's the West Coast, which is the rematch between William Zepeda and Tevin Farmer. Now, for those of you who saw the original fight, Um, I scored the original fight to Tevin Farmer by 1 point due to the knockdown. I had it 94-95 to him. But yeah, it was, I mean, look, it was a fairly close fight. There was a lot of arguments to say Tevin should have got the decision. You know, if William gets it by a round, maybe a point, maximum 2, you might say, okay, fair enough. But yeah, I think it was, he had some very wide scorecards in that one, which also people weren't too pleased about. But the rematch happened. There was a lot of talk about the you know, the no drug testing before or after the fight, which was supposed to be in the contract, and so far we kind of got hit. Just before we get to that, a couple fights on the undercard. Two of them particularly, you had Yokasta Valle is moving up from minimum weight to flyweight, I believe, to take on Marlon Esparza. Don't know why specifically Marlon Esparza, seeing that she doesn't have any titles or anything up there, and Yokasta is she's got a title. I think she's a 2-time minimum weight champion. I think she was looking for unification, but she's moved up to face Marlon for this. She said that she will be going back down to a weight class afterwards, but she wants to achieve greatness. I can only assume that maybe this is one of those almost keep busy fights where she wants to feel what it's like at that weight class, so that when she's eventually ready to go up there, she knows kind of what to expect from sort of the 112 division. And maybe it's just a case of when the fight was initially being announced, there wasn't enough time for her to be able to get down to 105 pounds, and so she decided she wanted to try it at 112 instead. Not quite sure, but in this one, while Marlon Esparza is the noticeably much bigger lady of the two, she has no power, and even her footwork and her movement has sort of diminished a little bit from before. And since she likes to fight in the phone booth now, she doesn't even move like she used to. She tends to try to sort of get on the inside and try to be rough and use her size to her advantage. I think Yokasta Valle punches harder. I think she punches quicker. They're of a similar height, so she's not Marlon's not also going to have the sort of the height and reach advantage as such. I don't think she's got the footwork to take on Yokasta and to sort of just keep her on the outside and control her. Yokasta's a much more aggressive, busy fighter, and I think all of that basically plays into the fact. Also, not to mention, she's a lot more liked and is a lot more of a sellable asset in terms of when she's in her hometown. Her and her sister Naomi, they are huge stars in their country. She's also built quite a big following outside of that now, obviously in the States, especially after having the Sinisa Estrada fight, etc. So there won't be any funny business on the cards like we're used to seeing from Marlon Esparza and her fights. I'm quite comfortable in predicting that Yokasta Valle wins this fight via a unanimous decision. I think, yes, it will be competitive-ish in spots, but I think the work rate overall, she's just going to outwork Esparza and sort of claim a victory for someone that's basically been gifted the second half of their career. That's my thoughts on that one. Moving up to, there is a title defense for Oscar Collazo against Edwin Hernandez. This one, not really going to go too much into it. Look, Hernandez is he's a solid opponent. He's probably top 10 in the WBO, somewhere around there. I think Oscar Collazo, this is a fight I think that sort of just keeps him in the public conscious after what he done on Latino night when he unified those titles initially. So yeah, look, Collazo, I think that he wins. ultimately, and I do think he wins by knockout. He's 11-0. Edwin, I think, is 13-2-1. It's gonna be a good fight. I definitely think for the lower weights, it'll be a very good fight. But ultimately, I do think Oscar Collazo wins this one, and wins it pretty standardly. Real good talent, and I expect him to show that. Right, so moving on to William Zepeda and Tevin Farmer. This is a 12 rounder. The previous one was 10 rounds. Now, while I do believe that Tevin Farmer won the first one based on just 1 point, so it was even in rounds. It was 5 rounds apiece, the way I looked at it. But this one is actually a 12 rounder, which ultimately I think plays more into William Zepeda's hands, especially considering that in rounds, I think it was like rounds 8, 9, and 10 in the first fight, you saw Tevin Farmer having to sort of manage his minutes a bit more than he was doing sort of in the first half. First half of the fight was very sharp, very dangerous, like nullifying the work of William Zepeda, and he reduced and cut down that work rate that William had very significantly in those opening rounds. William started to get into it a lot more on the back end of the fight when Tevin started to get more tired and was having to work a bit harder, but Tevin managed those. But this being a 12 rounder, I feel like because he was kind of flagging in round sort of 8, 9, 10 in the first one, if you get to that same level now and you've got rounds 11 and 12 that you've got to deal with, you might have to hold on quite a bit. So not only do I think that gives William Zepeda more opportunities to land shots and more opportunities to obviously try to take Tevin out, it also means Tevin may have more chances to start having to hold and clinch, and not tactical clinching, maybe just clinching for a break. And he did get a couple of warnings from the ref in the first fight, so I could also see a scenario now, especially now that we're not in Saudi and we're in, they're back in the States, where he could even potentially get a point taken off for holding towards the end. I don't know if I will go with William Zepeda to get the stoppage. I don't think he will. I think Tevin is too crafty to get stopped in this fight. But again, he has flagged a little bit in those later rounds in a couple of his last fights. Even though they're fights that I believe that he actually won and should have been given decisions in, those later rounds were telling. And rounds 11 and 12 is definitely going to be, I feel, where the deciding factor is this one. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be able to drop Zepeda like he did last time, but maybe Zepeda will take a bit more of a measured approach early on. But I do think he's going to take over this fight towards the back stretch of it, and I do think he will win. And I'm going to go conservative here because I just can't envision and really want to see Tevin Farmer get knocked out as such, or stopped in that sense. But I think that it will be a unanimous decision for William Zepeda. I definitely think, even though Tevin Farmer should have won the first one, I think William, especially this being a 12 rounder, will have the necessary tools to get the unanimous decision victory. It will be interesting though if the drug testing is enforced in this one, as obviously there was a lot of stuff made about it not being enforced in the first one. So I haven't heard any narratives about it yet. I haven't watched a press conference. I'll have to check that out and see what they say. But be interesting. But William Zepeda, unanimous decision is the pick. Actually, just before I move on to the top rank card with Mikaela Mayer and Sandy Ryan part 2, Angel Ayala is taking on Masamichi Yubiki in Japan Saturday morning for us guys, but it will be obviously Saturday night over there. This Masamichi is the IBF light flyweight champion, but he's moving up to flyweight to take on Angel Ayala, who is the IBF flyweight champion. Basically, this is Mexico versus Japan. I don't know how long Angel Ayala has actually been in Japan. That would have been a good thing to sort of find out. I didn't really do my research on that one. However, just in terms of the actual fights, Masamichi Yubiki, very credible light flyweight, has been for a long time 16-4, no, 17-4, sorry, is the record, but he's got 16 KOs in those 17 victories, so very powerful. Angel Ayala, 18 wins, no defeats, eight inside the distance, so he's not a big puncher. That being said, with Yubiki moving up 3 pounds, it's hard to tell whether, sorry, it would be 4 pounds, it's hard to tell whether or not his power will translate up there, and it also, we don't know if he can take the slightly heavier punches. Ayala's not the biggest of punchers, but he may have enough in there to get a stoppage. I don't think this one goes, I don't think this one ends in a stoppage though. I do think it goes the distance, and I think that Angel Ayala will retain his IBF World Flyweight title against Yubiki in a very spirited effort. I'm actually going to try and see if I can find somewhere to watch that fight. But yeah, quick one, I think Angel Ayala wins on points against Masamichi Yubiki. Okay, so moving on to Top Rank. There's a couple of my my favorite fighters on there. Shushu Carrington's on the card, Delonte Tiger Johnson's on the card, Emiliano Vargas is on the card as well. Some really good up and comers and good quality talent there. However, we're only looking at number 1, the chief support starting off, which is Brian Norman Jr. versus Derek Cuevas. Now obviously this is a rescheduled fight from their previously scheduled bout, which I think was supposed to take place in November last year, and then Brian Norman pulled out with an injury. This was after the back and forth between him and Jaron Ennis for the unification bout, where we feel like the Normans were definitely playing on Ennis's name, just trying to use him for some extra promotion. But that fight is still possibly something that can take place down the line in a 3-belt unification if Ennis beats Stanionis in a couple of weeks' time. Anyway, Cuevas, good opponent. There's absolutely nothing wrong with him. He's actually got a little bit more experience than Brian Norman in terms of professional fights. He's 27-1-1. He's on a 4-fight win streak at this point in time as well. I actually think, I'm trying to remember, he's actually got more knockouts. I think he's actually got more knockouts on his resume than Jordan as well, but he has been inactive. His last fight took place in I think it was December of 2023, so he hasn't fought in almost, at this point it would be coming up to nearly 15 months, whereas Brian Norman Jr., by comparison, I believe his last fight was May of last year. So 10 months, it's that's not hugely better, but it's still less than a year. And also he was training and in a training camp for a fight previously. So Cuevas is actually a little bit taller than Brian Norman Jr., so that would be an interesting facet. But in terms of who's the naturally bigger of the two, I definitely think it is Brian Norman Jr., and he's still growing. Do you now think about it? He's 26 wins, 20 inside the disc. Actually, he's got one KO more than Cuevas. Cuevas obviously Puerto Rican, so he's gonna have the heart. He's gonna obviously come to fight again. He's been on a win streak, but I wouldn't say that he's been fighting the top draw of opposition in those previous bouts. Not to say Norman has been either, but he's definitely fought I think better opposition overall, and I think that's what's going to be the telling factor here. Now I think Cuevas is going to be tough. I think it's going to be durable. The inactivity, I feel, is going to play a factor in this, and I am going with Brian Norman Jr. to win. I think that he's just a better trajectory, plus younger, fresher, hungrier, more aggressive. I'm just not sure if it's a stoppage in those mid to late rounds or if he goes the distance. I'm going to go with a late stoppage though, just because I think that seems to be the trajectory that he does generally go on. So yeah, I'm going to go with a late stoppage for Brian Norman Jr., probably about round sort of between 8 to 10. Moving on, main event, Mikaela versus Sandy Ryan. Now look, first fight was very fun fight, very competitive. However, I picked Mikaela to win the first fight. I thought that her work rate would be a bit too much, especially considering that Sandy is going to be either looking for that big knockout shot or is going to be just trying to obviously walk down. Mikaela is very methodical. She's got a great engine in the ring, and you know, I felt that the size might be an issue for Mikaela properly, but she would just get it through the work rate, as I didn't think it would end in a stoppage. This time she's now, you know, she's more acclimated to the weight. There's a lot kind of going into it. Now, when I did my previous predictions, we didn't have whole paint gate and all of that stuff, so none of that was a factor to me. And I don't know how much that affected Sandy Ryan in terms of what she did in the ring. Obviously, she doesn't have that to really contend with now, we would hope. She's also got a more settled camp herself. She's officially brought Kay Karoma as her head trainer now, rather than Flick Savoy. I don't know if Flick is anywhere around the camp, but you know, that was the big contention between her and Mikaela. But look, in terms of what happens in the ring, I think it's going to be a similar fight, but I actually think Mikaela's going to be a bit more aggressive, not boxing and moving as much. I feel that she's going to be pumping that jab out, and she's going to be trying to push Sandy onto the back foot more than having to do a lot of the moving like she did in the first fight. I think Sandy will have her opportunities to obviously cut the ring off. I think she's going to try and dig to the body a lot more, because in the first fight she had a lot of success when she was digging to the body. Even though she didn't sustain it, she kept trying to headhunt, whereas the body was where you could visibly see that Mikaela didn't like that. Now obviously no one does, and Mikaela's tough. She took it, she ate it, she came back, and especially with her shots, she had a lot more of the eye-catching shots throughout the fight. And I think ultimately that's kind of what got her the decision, which I do think it was the right decision. This time I think she's going to try to assert more dominance in it. I think Sandy will have better moments in the fight than she had in the first one, like cleaner and clearer moments. But I think overall Mikaela is gonna basically level up from what she done in the first fight, and I am gonna pick her to win. I think it's gonna be another points decision, but this time I feel like even though she got a unanimous decision on the, or was it a majority decision? Pretty sure it was a majority. It was I think one card was 95, yeah. And then the other one I think was 97, 93 and then 96, 94. So look, with that, I think Mikaela's going to get it a lot cleaner. I think it's going to be unanimous this time, and I think it's probably going to be like a 7 rounds to 3 type job, but she may have to come through something that's a lot sturdier than she had to in the first fight. It would be interesting if Sandy Ryan did win, and obviously a trilogy for them two would actually be very big business at this point with everything that's kind of gone on. But I don't know if Sandy's really got that mental aptitude for this assignment. There's things that she has to do and she has to change, and I don't think that she's got it in her locker now to change certain things the way she needs to change them in order to win this one. And one of those is work rate. She's never been the most what she has always kind of been the bigger girl, and trading on the fact that she's the bigger girl, she can bully the other person around. While she is still technically the bigger of the two in terms of weight and stuff, like Mikaela has filled out into that, and she is, you know, same height, reach, size as Sandy. So yeah, I do think that Mikaela wins it, unanimous decision. That's what I'm going with. Please leave your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and I will catch you in the next one. But for right now, it's Basis Picks locked.